The epistle of 1 Peter is a really remarkable document. It is an extended discussion of how to live as a Christian community in the face of opposition and even persecution. It is remarkable as much for what it does not say as for what it does say. We've seen how the writer likens believers to aliens and exiles, only instead of becoming aliens by physically moving to a new country, they've become aliens by belonging to a new religion, the Christian church. Christian belief and practice are different enough to make them seem like outsiders to others in the cities and towns where they lived. But we've also seen that instead of counseling them to withdraw into separate communities, let alone to engage in violence, the writer encourages them to live as faithful citizens in the societies in which they are embedded. And he reminds them that they are bound to suffer for their faith. In today's reading, he tells them why their suffering is actually redemptive. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Friday, December 1st, 2023. Having encouraged believers to remain within oppressive relationships, which most of us would be only too eager to abandon, 1 Peter now tells them why their suffering isn't simply an unpleasant side effect of their belief, but can actually serve a positive function. And he doesn't have to look far for a model. The suffering and death of Jesus Christ forms the pattern for Christian living. It's not just that believers themselves benefit from Christ's sacrificial death for sin, it's that his suffering and death point to a way of being in the world. Remember, 1 Peter has already told them that they are a royal priesthood, meaning that their life together is in part an opportunity to offer up atoning sacrifices on behalf of the world. Here's what he says: "It is better to suffer for doing good, if suffering should be God's will, than to suffer for doing evil. For Christ also suffered for sins once for all, the righteous for the unrighteous, in order to bring you to God. He was put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the Spirit, in which also he went and made a proclamation to the spirits in prison, who in former times did not obey, when God waited patiently in the days of Noah during the building of the ark, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were saved through water. And baptism, which this prefigured, now saves you, not as a removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to God for a good conscience, through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God with angels, authorities, and powers made subject to him. Since, therefore, Christ suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves also with the same intention. For whoever has suffered in the flesh has finished with sin, so as to live for the rest of your earthly life no longer by human desires, but by the will of God. You have already spent enough time in doing what the Gentiles like to do, living in licentiousness, passions, drunkenness, revels, carousing, and lawless idolatry. They are surprised that you no longer join them in the same excesses of dissipation, so that they blaspheme. But they will have to give an accounting to him who stands ready to judge the living and the dead. For this is the reason the gospel was proclaimed even to the dead, so that though they have been judged in the flesh as everyone is judged, they might live in the Spirit as God does." This is really breathtaking. The writer seems to say that it is possible to gain redemption even after death. It's his point in talking about Jesus making a proclamation to the spirits in prison who in former times did not obey. And by the way, this is the basis for that line in the Apostles' Creed that says, "He descended into hell." Those who cause the righteous to suffer in this life will certainly be judged. The suffering of Christ has benefited both current believers and the spirits of the dead because his suffering caused former unbelievers, including, of course, those who are now believers, to come to faith. The writer seems now to say that their suffering at the hands of unbelievers can potentially move unbelievers to repentance in this life or in the life to come. Wow. I have to say that this is a message that should cause us to pause and think, though. None of us in our day and age would encourage someone to stay in a truly abusive relationship, but that's what 1 Peter seems to say. But then again, the world then was different from the world today. There really wasn't much of any way for people in those days to escape their circumstances the way there is now. It's no accident, for example, that it is often Christian believers who have founded many of the homes for battered and abused women to escape from their abusers. No, his advice to endure suffering because of its redemptive effect on the abuser just won't fly quite the same way today. But maybe the lesson for us is not that we should counsel people to stay in abusive relationships, but rather that we can continue to hold out hope for the eventual redemption of abusers themselves. It's a question of hope rather than a message of passive acceptance of evil. That message will always resonate. Tomorrow, we finish up our walk through 1 Peter, and the writer calls upon believers to take an active role in their response to their suffering. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.